Nupinion is a news aggregator designed to foster news literacy. It's an anti-personalized news app that bursts your media bubble and allows you to compare news coverage across multiple sources. News outlets, social media networks, aggregators, and search engines have all invested a lot of money in personalization algorithms. What's personalization? Personalization algorithms related to news tailor the articles shown to readers based on characteristics such as their interests, demographic profile, reading habits, personal feedback, and more. Why is it used? Personalization is attractive to advertisers because they can better target their ads. It's attractive to users because they see the things that are most relevant to them. However, personalized news can have a dangerous impact on society by confirming personal biases while giving people the illusion of being exposed to a wide range of views online. Nupinion's goal is to fight this personalization trend, to find better ways to aggregate news that help foster media literacy among students and engage global citizens in democratic debate across ideological divides. Nupinion's homepage shows multiple sources side by side. Students are able to quickly browse major headlines across a variety of topics. This approach to visualizing news highlights how coverage changes across outlets and audiences. It quickly shows the editorial decisions being made at each outlet in terms of prioritizing certain stories. It also enables students to compare the language being used in headlines to frame the debate. The outlets shown on the homepage are limited to the most popular outlets in the U.S. and classified by their audience. There are sources with a primarily Democrat voting audience and sources with a primarily Republican voting audience. While this is a simplistic dichotomy, it helps students reflect on how an outlet's audience will influence editorial and journalistic choices. Clicking this button in the top left filters breaking news by outlets with a primarily Democrat voting audience. Clicking this button in the top right shows you outlets with largely Republican voters. Nupinion's search feature lets students and teachers compare coverage on any issue over time. Let's see how coverage on the student walkouts differed across American media outlets. How are these articles chosen? Nupinion shows articles related to your search terms and tries to maximize diversity by cycling through sources with different audiences. It's designed to stimulate students to think about how the source of a story influences the language used to frame the debate. The news feed and search results can be filtered according to audience, country, source, political bias, and date. What language is used to describe the student walkouts in sources with a more liberal audience? America's school shootings are framed as tragic and endless. Walkouts are framed as positive forces for progressive social change. Anti-administration language is used in passing. The large scale of walkouts is highlighted. Guns and violence are repeatedly connected by the term gun violence. The students are portrayed as strongly moral actors pushing for a better society. They are even compared to the civil rights movement. What language is used by sources with a more conservative audience? Does it frame the events differently? Rather than emphasize the large scale of walkouts, there is reference to a student being the only one in their school to have walked out. Suspensions resulting from the walkout are highlighted, and language refers to school safety bill rather than gun violence. The walkouts are also framed as anti-gun rather than against gun violence. Students are portrayed as anti-American. The legality of the walkout itself is called into question. The walkout is connected directly with words with strong negative connotations, such as lies. Overall, the differences in coverage of the walkout between liberal and conservative sources is obvious. Rather than heralding a positive force for progressive social change on a large scale, the walkout is denigrated as a group of disrespectful, anti-gun, militant, and demanding youth. This type of news feed highlights these differences. How would a student searching Google or using news apps be able to notice this change in framing and language? The results shown are heavily personalized in those cases. They confirm a student's existing biases and create an echo chamber online. Nupinion hopes to promote a more critical approach to reading news that shows students how an outlet's audience influences their coverage on the issue. It also promotes reading news at the source by following the link. Differences in coverage are often even bigger across countries. Students can use Nupinion to explore how cultural differences and domestic politics frame the debate for international issues. Let's search for Syria and use the country filters. What are American outlets focusing on? U.S. foreign policy in Syria, American military casualties, and violence in Syria. Trump is mentioned repeatedly by name. Domestic politics form the backdrop for framing the debate. A student evaluating these headlines would likely assume the main questions surrounding the Syrian conflict are if U.S. intervention would be effective and how Trump's policies might be different from his predecessor. What about news outlets in Iran? What are they writing about? A U.S. strike is criticized as futile. Focus is on Iran, Syria, and Russia cooperating to improve tensions in the region. The US, UK, and France are portrayed as warmongers. It suggests US withdrawal is the result of unity between Iran, Syria, Turkey, Russia, and Iraq. Links are made between France and terrorists in Syria. Military strikes in Syria are said to violate international law. Does a student browsing these headlines come to different conclusions? They might question the legitimacy of intervention in the region, as well as what Western allies hope to achieve and if their strategy is currently effective. What are Russian outlets covering the most? They're writing about meetings between Putin and Trump, the role of Russia in trying to de-escalate the conflict, Turkish airstrikes killing British soldiers, Syria's criticism of the West for blocking fact-finding missions, Russia's role in protecting Syria and its military efficacy at doing so. A student browsing these headlines might assume that Russia is effectively mediating the conflict rather than making it worse. How do Syrian outlets cover the conflict? The conflict is referred to as a terrorist war. Foreign military involvement is condemned as illegal. Chemical attacks are claimed as terrorist acts. Syria is portrayed as a country fighting for its civilians against terrorism. Deaths caused by U.S. military are highlighted. The violation of UN law by foreign powers is referenced. What does a student browsing these headlines think about? The role of Syrian media in supporting Assad's regime? The influence of language in framing a conflict as a civil war compared to a series of terrorist attacks? The differences between this language and that used by U.S. outlets to frame the issue is stark. A student comparing these headlines across countries like this can better understand the domestic interests and geopolitical factors that influence media coverage in different countries. It reminds them that news-literate global citizens should remember three things. Different countries have different interests and values. All countries are constrained by international norms. And media plays a key role in shaping those norms and building a narrative of events to fit them. News literacy is increasingly important in a digital world saturated by media and geared towards personalization. This is not about left or right, Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal. It's not about justifying one country's actions over another's. This is about enabling anyone to easily compare media coverage on important issues. It's about improving news literacy by showing students how coverage changes over time and depending on political perspective. At Nupinion, we want to work with educators and students to build tools that help anyone navigate this complex media environment. We hope the result will be students with strong news literacy skills that help them think critically and globally, as well as acting locally.